This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
We're here now. So let's talk about the summer and those house shows and the payoffs. Where does that come from? Or are you comparing notes with other guys? I don't know another way to ask that.
And that's something that being around the industry and, hey man, and you got to remember how hot the business was. Hey, Vancouver did this number, and the agents back then, Dave Hebner, Tony Gurria, Rene Goulet. I'm trying to think of was Chief still there? But anyway, just the houses were good and business was good, and just things were rolling along and payoffs were good. And it's a dressing room full of guys. Hey man, that Kansas City payoff was damn sure good, or that Chicago payoff was great, or man, I thought I'd get more. It's always been locker room talk when there's payoff days. Now contractual and downside and guarantees.
That's different.
It's not, the business has evolved, but in those days it was a subjective payoff system, 100%, not 95%, 100%.
Well, I heard a phrase years ago. I think even Jim Ross talked about it, because occasionally JR has said that guys would get their payoff for a pay-per-view, and he specifically listed guys like Scott Hall and Kevin Nash and Shawn Michaels, and they would compare notes, and somebody would feel like they got the short end of the stick. They would go complain, and JR would write them another check. He would say, well, let me see what I can do. He'd talk to Vince, and then he'd write him another check. But JR has also admitted that over the years, he would make the payroll, and then Vince would approve it. So it's not as if Vince is sitting down putting pen to paper. It's JR who does it. And he's also shared that there wasn't a true mathematical formula like we've always heard the NWA champion got paid back in the day, X percentage of whatever. That wasn't the case. And sometimes if a guy was not happy with his payday, and he did sort of protest to JR, I believe the phrase that was used was, Jim, you pencil fucked me. Did you feel like JR was pencil fucking you?
I didn't use that potty mouth language you're like. No, 100%, 100%. And it got to the point that you got to remember to reel back. I'm the son of a promoter.
Yeah.
Hey man, if you don't like my payoff, son, leave.
Go somewhere else. Yeah.
It's really that simple. The promoter is the one who night in, night out puts their ass on the line.
Right.
Yes, the talent drives the ship. Yes, the talent draws the money. All of that. But if Vince all of a sudden in whatever year said, you know what, I'm going to cap this baby at WrestleMania 10. I'm going to go get into the MMA industry. You guys have fun. What? I mean, now, of course he wouldn't do that, but the promoter's the one who ultimately rolls the dice.
Yeah.
Period. End of story. So I always had a real struggle. And again, that's my upbringing, and my grandmother run, spot show towns. And now I'm going way back, but if there were certain talent that complained about different things, she would just pick up the phone, call her son and say, hey, don't book so-and-so on my cards. Teeny, because that's what he called her. Teeny, they're in the same event. Hey, son, I just want to be real clear. When I get these winter cards printed, they're not going to be on the card. Don't book them. I mean, it was that kind of mentality. So I always really had a problem to go against my nature to go, quote unquote, and complain about payoffs. But when the contract shift happened into that deal 1 year, I kind of knew the gloves were off in so many ways. I didn't let it be known. I didn't go in the dressing room and bitch and complain and moan about this. But that was a really hard pill to swallow, because that was, here's the deal. I'm going to change it. I said, okay, I don't have a choice because you're the boss, but I don't trust you. I don't trust the hand that's feeding me. So get into that summer, payoff after payoff. And I can remember I worked with Dustin Rhodes on a couple of loops. And I heard him say something to another guy, and I pulled him aside and asked him. There's a couple of different stories. I don't want to put it just on Dustin, but different talent talking. And when I started knowing my payoffs, I'm like, whoa.
So to add context, you're saying in these matches, you're the Intercontinental Champion. You're working with Goldust, and Goldust in this era is not as featured as maybe he was a few years prior. Still a great performer, but maybe not as prominent of a spot on television with his character at the time.
Yes.
And so you're sort of on the A side of that match, if that makes sense.
And I'll be very transparent here. The quote unquote the puppies in the Attitude Era and Lawler's commentary, that was the act.
Yes.
The IC title with the puppies. That was the act. That when the music hit of that era, my music hit in that era, people went, here they come. It's that simple. It was, okay, here comes that asshole Jeff Jarrett with the puppies.
Yeah.
Whatever. If she would have walked out by herself, it would still been the puppies. It wouldn't have been the same. If I would have walked by myself without the puppies, it wouldn't have been the same. At the time, the act was hot.
Yeah. And he was making more than you. He being Goldust, Dustin Rhodes. His payoffs were
several runs. Yes.
Can you give me a percentage? I mean, was it double?
So noticeably that I said, I got to say something.
Okay.
Twice.
So if it's a few hundred one way or another, who cares? But when it's substantial, it's like, wait a minute.
Percent would be, and I'm pulling that out of the thing, but it was substantial enough to know that this amount of much every night, I'm a couple of grand short here. And now we're going to do 2 or 3. Okay. We're getting up into 5 figures.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's substantial because it does, man, I feel bad, but there's no way to say this. You felt like maybe Jim Ross, it's not like he was looking out for Vince because he would have shortchanged you both. It had to feel personal. Fair to say?
So I could never put my thumb on that because I have to believe, and you can't put it, that's why you just can't put it all on JR because right. Vince is the boss. Good, bad, or ugly, it's his company.
No matter what, Vince approved it.
You damn right he did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and so knowing that, okay, Jeff, swallow the pill, my friend. You like this job you got here? Quit bitching. I mean, that's just how I was raised. So, but I had a real dichotomy of trying to navigate my way through that, hey, squeaky wheel gets the oil. Or do I not squeak? Or but there came a point where I had to squeak.
Yeah. And that's worth mentioning too, because I do feel like just knowing you in real life, there is a very much a sense of, you said optimism, but gratefulness on your regard, where I feel like, hey man, even if the payday could have been a little better, gosh, I'm still making great money and getting to do what I love. It's probably not worth fussing about, but it adds up enough to where you're like, okay, well now it just feels egregious. I've got to address it. Fair to say?
100%, because it just comes to the point that to sort of keep the, I guess you could say the testosterone, the ego, they run over they're going to lose respect for you if you don't say something.
They can't walk all over you. Yeah.
Yeah. And you could be this team player to a fault. And I've had, we'll get into AJ Styles stories. I can't tell you, and he'll tell you this, I can't tell you how many conversations I had with AJ in, we'll call it the early TNA, 04, 05, 06. And I'd look at him and say, dude, if you don't get selfish, you're never going to arrive.
I get it. It's a wrestling podcast, but he's saving us money on our mortgage. Do you really trust this process? The reviews don't lie. 5-star review after 5-star review. We make it fast, we make it easy, and it's no cost or obligation. Give us a shot to earn your business. I'm telling you, you'll be glad you did, especially if you like keeping more of your own money. You don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket, so what are you waiting for? Hurry to savewithconrad.com.
I mean, never. And I would tell him, trust me, learn from my mistakes. That's the real nature of it, that this business is ego driven and egotistical. And yes, you got to have a great storyline and you got to have great marketing behind you, but also as a talent, you've got to crawl and scratch. And that's why, like Steve, to his credit, he went through Hollywood Blondes. He came out of Texas and went to and he was the ringmaster, and then boom, that caught fire. You damn right he's going to hold on to every bit of that spot, and rightly so.
So do you address the discrepancy in pay with JR or with Vince?
No, with JR.
And how did that go?
Diplomatic. Hey, Jim, you got a minute? Sure. I mean, I'm talking into the hall passing or walk it, whatever it may be during those days. And again, he's at Raw. That's the only time you would see him at Raw pay-per-views. It's one day of TV, and for that's the sort of the loop until SmackDown got going. Hey, JR, you got a minute? And he's dealing with Austin Rock I was well aware looking through his lens enough to say he ain't got a lot of time. I mean, you got a minute? I got my check. Is there any way we can take another look at it? Hey, Jeff, he literally take out his pen and pencil. What house show run are you talking about? This, and this. And of course I had it in my head. I was ready for the whole conversation, and the whole conversation may last 3 minutes, which is chuckling now that I'm looking back on this stage of my career. Literally, Jim would write the note. Yep. I'll see what I can do. Check would arrive in the mail.
So he corrected it
twice.
Okay. So that made you feel good. Right?
I knew that wasn't quote unquote correcting. That was
placating. Yeah.
Sure. Whatever you want to say. Okay. He squeaked. I might've made a mistake. It is what it is. And maybe he did.
But also too, his job in that, I feel like we're villainizing JR a little bit, so I want to soften it up. But the reality is his job when he's cutting that payoff is he's got to guard the kitty. He's protecting the house money. I mean, every dollar that he doesn't pay out is profit. He
had to hit a number. I'm sure Vince's equation, whether it's 10, 12, 15, 20, 25, whatever payoff bucket number was. And remember who gets paid first.
Oh,
and rightly so, the main event.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so I got it. I really completely, to this day, understood it, and I understood it in 99. It is what it is. But there came a point that I had to chirp a little.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.